Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad yesterday inaugurated 3 new nuclear projects in a ceremony that was broadcast live on the state television network IRIB. At the Iranian Atomic Organization in Tehran, Ahmadinejad witnessed the insertion of Iran's first homemade nuclear fuel rods into a medical reactor. The president then opened via video conference link up 2 other projects in the Natanz plant in central Iran. The plants there will now be able to enrich uranium to 20% and will also use a new type of centrifuge capable of a far higher enrichment speed than previous models. Also present at the ceremony in Tehran were Foreign Minister and Nuclear Chief. The IRIB report did not mention the opening of the new enrichment site of Fordo in Qom province, which had been expected to be among the projects opened by the president. The facility, about 160 kilometers south of Tehran, is capable of enriching uranium to levels of 3.5, 4, and 20%. The Tehran reactor was established in 1967, equipped with a 5-megawatt pool type. The fuel for this reactor was initially provided by Argentina, but this stopped a few years ago. The fuel was then supposed to be provided by Russia and France, but a deal struck in October 2009 failed, and Iran began making a fuel itself by first enriching uranium to 20% and then turning it into fuel rods. Enriched uranium is a critical component for both civil nuclear power generation and atomic weapons. ISNA news agency commented the news project showed that Iran would not be intimidated by international threats over its nuclear program and would continue with its technological advances.
We're still on Iran, as Iran's oil ministry denied state media reports Wednesday on the Islamic State stopping its crude exports to 6 European countries, according to Reuters. Meanwhile, Iran's top diplomat to Korea said the Korean government might cut Iranian oil imports by 10 to 15%. Iran's oil ministry spokesman told Reuters that they denied the report on Iran stopping oil exports to 6 European countries, but if such decision was made, it would be announced by the Supreme National Security Council. Iran's English-language press TV had earlier said Tehran has stopped exporting oil to France, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Netherlands, and Spain. Angry speeches and TV appearances by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and Iran's supreme leader condemned the recent assassinations of Iranian scientists and promised retaliation against European countries that cooperated in a threatened oil embargo. 6 EU countries were warned of a possible cutoff in Iranian oil deliveries, but hours later, the country's oil ministry appeared to back away from the threats. On other developments, a top Iranian diplomat in Korea said the Korean government might cut oil imports from Iran by 10 to 15%. The expected move is part of the U.S.-led sanctions to pressure Tehran to end its nuclear ambitions. The Iranian ambassador to Korea said the Korean government informed that they might decrease oil imports from Iran to the level of 2010, which would be a decrease by at least 10 to 15%. However, Korea's Knowledge Economy Ministry denied any such plans, saying nothing had been decided yet. Ministry spokesman said after Washington requested that Seoul join the sanctions last month, the 2 allies have been in talks, but there has been no mention about the percentage by which oil imports would be cut. Seoul has been seeking an exemption this year from the application of the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act that bans economic entities dealing with the Iranian Central Bank from doing business with U.S.-based financial institutions. Because the Iranian Central Bank collects the country's oil export revenues, the act, which goes into effect around July, essentially forces all the countries to stop importing oil from Iran. Iranian crude accounts for about 10% of Korea's oil imports. There have been concerns in Korea that a drastic cut of oil imports from Iran would have negative effects on Korea's economy. Asked about the possibility that the relationship between Seoul and Tehran was soiled in the wake of the oil import issue, Iranian embassy spokesperson stressed that everything depends on the Korean side. He said Iran wants to preserve relations with Korea, but it knows that there is pressure to Korea from the U.S. side.
Well, those were lengthy reports, Kunarawi, on Iran, as it's been on the news all the time. We have three issues on Iran, one on oil that you've just read, and the other one on the atomic energy, as well as on the bombing that has been in Bangkok earlier on Tuesday. So we have a lot of updates on Iran, but now let's move around the world to the Eurozone. Greece has finally delivered the necessary assurance for a new bailout. The chief of the Eurogroup panel of Eurozone finance ministers said, adding that he expected the aid to be approved on Monday. Until Wednesday, Greece had fulfilled only one of the three conditions set by the Eurogroup for a 130 billion euro aid package, approval by Parliament on Sunday of a 3 billion euro austerity and economic reform package. In a statement late Wednesday, Eurogroup President and Luxembourg Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker said Athens had explained how it intended to close a 325 million euro budget gap and provided strong assurance from political leaders that they would stick to the bailout terms. Greek Finance Minister Evangelos Venizelos said on Greek television that most of the issues had been resolved in the talks, leaving only some technical matters to be clarified. EU officials were particularly anxious to get written guarantees from conservative leaders Antonis Samaras, who is favored to become prime minister after elections expected in April. In a letter leaked to the press, Samaras indicated that he would stick to the deficit reduction targets, but warned that the policy modifications might be required to guarantee the full program's implementation. Earlier, Amadou Altafaj, spokesman for EU Economy Commissioner Olli Rehn, said that time was running out to prove the bailout by March 20, when Greece faces a 14.5 billion euro bond repayment. He would not be drawn on speculation that the Eurogroup this week could at least launch preparations for a parallel 100 billion euro debt write-off deal, which is also a part of the aid package. Until now, there were expectations that aid needed to be approved by this week to allow for the legal procedures linked to the bond swap deal to be concluded in time and for countries such as Germany to secure parliamentary approval for the assistance. Rainer Breuderl from the German Free Democrats, Chancellor Angela Merkel's junior coalition partner, suggested that Greece's payment could be made in installments, depending on Athens' progress in reducing its deficit. In a sign that German requests for tough preconditions were being heeded, Juncker said further considerations are necessary regarding the specific mechanism to strengthen the surveillance of programs' implementation and to ensure that priority is given to debt servicing. In Berlin, Merkel's spokesman Stefan Siebert denied the Financial Times reports indicating that Germany, the Netherlands, and Finland, three Eurozone countries that have retained top-notch AAA credit ratings, had lost faith in Greece and were considered letting it default. Letting go of Greece carries the risk of contagion effect to the other vulnerable Eurozone economies, some analysts had warned. But this week, Spain, Italy, and Portugal successfully completed bond auctions, despite market being aware of the threat for Greece.
Our focus is still on Europe, as listed economic data showed that the economies of Italy and the Netherlands, two of Eurozone's biggest economies, have fallen into recession. Italy and the Netherlands economies have shrunk 0.7% in the fourth quarter last year, marking the second consecutive quarter of economic contraction. However, France had a surprise growth of 0.2% at the end of last year from healthy growth in their exports. Germany's economy fell by 0.2%, its first negative quarter since 2009. The overall economy of 17 nations fell 0.3% in the fourth quarter. By comparison, the United States reported growth of 0.7%. The Eurozone has not slipped into recession as it reported growth of 0.1% in the third quarter. Europe's debt crisis has already pushed Greece, Portugal, and Belgium into recession, defied by 2 consecutive quarters of contraction.
The head of World Bank President Robert Zoellick said that he will leave the international development lender when his 5-year term expires in June. A former U.S. Trade Representative and Deputy Secretary of State under President George W. Bush, Zoellick headed the World Bank during a period that saw developing countries coping with the first global recession since World War II, as well as price spikes for oil, food, and other vital commodities. He said the World Bank was strong, healthy, and well-positioned for new challenges, and so it is a natural time for him to move on and support new leadership. A group of 8 organizations and development activists called for the new World Bank chief to be selected in an open, merit-based process. A coalition including Oxfam, Eurodat, and the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development, or AFRODET, called Wednesday for the United States to renounce its monopoly on the post of World Bank president. The World Bank post has always gone to a U.S. nominee, while the chief of the International Monetary Fund has come from Europe. Throughout the history of the Washington-based sister agencies, which were founded following the World War II. Christine Lagarde, formerly French finance minister, was appointed IMF managing director last year after an unprecedented challenge from Mexican central bank chief Agustin Carsten for the leadership of the international crisis lender. The United States supported Lagarde while major developing and emerging countries, which have gained voting shares into the 2 agencies in recent years in recognition of their growing economy's influence, were split.
UBS AG, Credit Suisse Group AG, and Morgan Stanley's credit rating may be cut as many as 3 levels by Moody's Investors Service, which is reviewing 17 banks and securities firms with a global capital markets operation. Goldman Sachs Group, Deutsche Bank AG, JP Morgan Chase & Co., and Citigroup are among companies that may be downgraded by 2 levels, Moody's said in a statement, adding that the guidance is indicative only. Moody's today cut some European insurers' ratings based on risks stemming from the region's sovereign debt crisis. The potential downgrades, which may raise borrowing costs and force banks to increase collateral, put the ratings company at odds with bond investors who are sticking with bets that new capital rules and trading limits will make the financial firms safer in the long run. Funding costs have climbed for banks worldwide as Greece's debt woes roll markets. Jim Antos, a Hong Kong-based financial analyst at Mizuho Securities, said in the next 2 years, big banks will be less robust than they used to be. Barclays plc, BNP Paribas SA, Credit Agricole SA, HSBC Holdings, Macquarie Group, and Royal Bank of Canada may also be cut by 2 levels, according to Moody's. On the other hand, Bank of America, Nomura Holdings, Royal Bank of Scotland Group, and Societe Generale SA may be lowered by 1 grade.